Greetings and salutations, fellow peasants. It's the 3rd of February, 2025, and I'm Thaddeus Satori. Today I'd like to share some thoughts on insanity. From the perspective of an alien, it would appear that we humans are all insane, and it's simply a matter of degrees. After all, we are collectively destroying the only planet we know we can live on. In the name of short-term profits, we are robbing our children and grandchildren of a decent future, or perhaps any future. Tell me that's not insanity. A few at either end of the spectrum are batshit crazy, while most of us are somewhere in the middle. We evolved in small communities over millions of years, and either through discipline, eviction, or outright execution, we were able to keep the extremes in check. But as we settle into ever larger communities, it was no longer possible to know everyone personally, and so we lost this safety mechanism. Hierarchies and governments began to form and became dominated by the greediest and most psychopathic. After countless wars and societal collapses, we were lulled into believing that progress would continue to march forward with the Age of Enlightenment, the founding of America, the French Revolution, the U.S. Civil War, the New Deal, and the Great Society. But given their aversion to sharing, and because of the organized, methodical, tenacious, and well-funded pushback of the ruling class, here we are today. Most of us just want to be left alone, have our basic needs met, and for our children to be better off than we were. Unfortunately, we are also easily baited and manipulated. Programmed to reflect the views of our political, business, religious, community, and family leaders, we are taught to defend their values, even if it means voting against our own best interests, or ultimately giving up our very lives. As Hermann Goering said in an interview after World War II, why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back in one piece? Manipulating the masses to support the few crazies is essential. I've read and listened to numerous diaries of German soldiers fighting on the Eastern Front. Many had been born into the generation following the senseless slaughter of World War I, had been programmed to genuinely believe that they were the superior race, and, therefore, had the right to do whatever their psychopathic leaders told them to. At the outset, they were gung-ho to go off on this righteous adventure of conquest, rape, and pillage, as young men are wont to do. The game for which they had been training so hard and so long had finally arrived. But by the time they realized that they were just sacrificial pawns, it was too late. 2,000 kilometers from home, under-equipped and sleeping rough in minus 40 degrees, freezing, starving, dying of thirst. All they wanted was to be back home, surrounded by loved ones, to fall asleep with a full belly in a warm bed. When I first spent time in a village in northern Thailand, I looked around one day and thought, wow, not so long ago, my country was dropping bombs, napalm, and Agent Orange on people just like these. They know nothing of geopolitics or the domino theory. They're just rice farmers. To be clear, I'm not a pacifist. I have come across people who would not let me walk away from a fight. It's unfortunate that we live in a world in which such people exist, but it doesn't do any good to pretend that it's otherwise. The bully doesn't not pick on you because you are weak. But I'm more aligned with the metaphor of the bamboo bending with the wind, as is taught by some of the deadliest martial arts ever created. Don't be rigid, for it's the rigid that break. As you are not defending ego, you apply only the force that is necessary, and no more. And because you are not afraid, you don't get the usual adrenaline rush, which tends to cloud rational thought and impede proper action. Today we are witnessing the opposite of this with ICE and border control in Minnesota and elsewhere.
Because I said so. Don't make me shoot you. I'm in charge, man.
Just as the countless invaders who came before, they have been programmed by their masters to believe that they are superior, and therefore, whatever they do must be right. Clearly, many recent enlistees are control freaks who lack in empathy and actually enjoy causing pain. But I wonder how many wouldn't have joined if not for the great economic stresses that this system causes. I have to think a lot of them were just broke. saw no real opportunities, and simply couldn't resist the offer of a huge sign-up bonus. The U.S. loss in Vietnam exposed the catastrophic failure of drafting people who literally didn't sign up for this shit, and so it shifted to an all-voluntary military. I sometimes wonder how many would willingly put themselves in harm's way if they had better options. How many would join if society offered free training programs, free or low-cost higher education, affordable housing, and universal health care? You know, like the military does. Damn you, socialism. Imagine what kind of society we could create if we lived as Jesus had directed. If our taxes were spent on improving the lives of the needy, the weak, and the ordinary, instead of being squandered on figuring out better ways to kill each other and to steal other people's shit. Of course, we also have to make a handful of people stinking rich in the process. We have created an economic system in which we are damned if we do and damned if we don't. I live in a small city in South America, and December is a very busy month. Anywhere between 1 million and 2.5 million people make an annual religious pilgrimage here. They all take showers and flush toilets every day, and since their arrival, many of us who live here have been suffering water outages. The freshwater sources in the area continue to be depleted, yet the obvious solution, cancel the bloody festival, can't be done. Without the huge infusion of money from the tourists, the local economy would collapse. This seems to be the case globally. Tell me we haven't painted ourselves into a corner. I've spent half of my adult life living in other countries, and my primary takeaway is this. The world is run by a bunch of psychopaths whose greed is going to get us all killed. The problem is, they own the media and thus the story. They provide the jobs that keep us 1 or 2 paychecks from living on the street, and they've destroyed the education system to the point where we equate financial success with wisdom and virtue. They've convinced us that the solution to our existential dilemma is just one more purchase away, one more invention, one more invasion. And we allow them to turn us into hypocrites. It's okay for my team to do it, but when the other team does it, that's just wrong. And instead of using their obscene wealth to improve this planet, they indulge themselves in some hallucinogenic fantasy by building doomsday bunkers or terraforming Mars. They can see the destruction of the course they are steering us on, and they want to leave us behind after they've extracted all they can from this planet and from us. Tell me that's not insane. Our leaders are addicts who cannot stop themselves from seeking more money and power through divide and rule. It's time for us peasants to take back both. So, engage in your democracy while you still have one. Gandhi, MLK, and many others have shown us that peaceful protests are the best way to fight against the monopoly on power and violence. Quietly withdraw your support of the system. Stop buying useless junk. Join a local group. Learn how to garden and preserve food without refrigeration. Learn how to make soap, clothes, and other basic needs for survival. I know a lot of experts, and even CEOs in the field, are worried about what AI is bringing, but I reckon we'll be lucky to have electricity. Of course, no one can see the future, but it looks to me like we're heading over the cliff, and the survivors are going to find themselves sitting around a campfire again, and regaining the safety mechanism to constrain or remove those who would threaten the welfare of the tribe. That's all I've got for now. Take good care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for listening. Cheers.